Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this session, highlighting 3 programs in Tanzania, Niger, and Nepal in strengthening hermetic storage supply chains through public-private partnerships. My name is Jennifer Mayer, and I'm a climate resilient actor, natural resource management advisor on the ProWash and Scale Award, which is a learning award funded by USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance that supports capacity strengthening and research for BHA implementing partners around the world. We focus on the sectors of agriculture, natural resources management, water resource management, livelihoods, and WASH. Joining me this morning from the ProWash and Scale side are my colleagues Tori and Suzanne. So if you have any technical issues during the session, please do reach out to any of us and we can help. So before we get started, we wanted to let you know that we will be providing French interpretation during this webinar. Please click on the globe button marked interpretation at the bottom of your screen and select your preferred language, whether English or French. You can also choose which language, and I might ask if you're not speaking to go ahead and mute your mic. But you can also choose which language you want to view the slides in. So at the top of the meeting window, you'll see 2 buttons. So you can click on one of those 2 to see either the English or French slides. Tori is sharing the English slides and Suzanne is sharing the French slides. So go ahead and select your preferred language now. And then lastly, we just wanted to let you know that we will be recording this event. Next slide. So we're going to run today's session as more of a peer-to-peer discussion among the 3 programs, clustered around key questions about what they've learned from the design and rollout of the approaches that they used. As part of each question cluster, we're going to open it up to the audience to reflect on how these findings might affect the way we work, whether in terms of designing and targeting programs, implementing them, or even measuring and monitoring them. And I also wanted to mention that while we'll have time during the session for those questions and discussion, if you have any questions or comments at any time, you can drop them in the chat. So let me introduce today's presenters. First, we have Kura Babakur, the Economic Recovery and Development Coordinator from IRC Niger, and his colleague Abdou Moussa Bondaba, also from the Economic Recovery and Development Team at IRC Niger. We have Prajuna Kesi, the Country Director of IDE Nepal, and Dieudonné Berbutsa, who is a professor as well as the director of the PICS program with Purdue. So we wanted to start with a bit of scene setting on first the impetus for these programs and hermetic storage in general. And for that, we're going to hear from Stephen Walsh of USAID. Steve?
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, and thank you, Jennifer. My name is Stephen Walsh. I'm a senior ag advisor for the Bureau, or with the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance. I also have the pleasure and the honor to be the AOR for this award. And before beginning my brief introduction here, I would like to make an acknowledgement for my colleague, Joe Deaver, our colleague at BHA, colleague at USAID. He was a former ag advisor. He passed away in July of this year. Joe was critical in designing this initiative, developing the program. He did this in collaboration with the ag team, but also importantly with the private sector engagement team with USAID. And I'd like to also note that in many ways, this program reflects Joe and his legacy at USAID. In that the program was highly collaborative, it was innovative, very much partner focused, with a commitment to learning. So the GDA itself, I think one of the things to take into note is that we're literally looking at very modest investment. So this involved partners submitting concept notes that were reviewed competitively. We awarded initially one concept note entered into what we call the co-creation phase, and that was ultimately awarded. And subsequently, we awarded 2 more concept notes that went through an initial review stage. It was selected, then we went through a co-design process. So the process itself was collaborative. It involved co-design, but ultimately we were looking at relatively modest investments. The total value of the program was $1.5 million. So it involved roughly $500,000 per partner. And has been mentioned, 3 partners received awards under this APS. And has been noted, really the emphasis here was to come up with innovative models to see how hermetic storage could be promoted, looking at market viable mechanisms. And additionally, we're looking at ways that how these models could also be promoted, leveraging public-private partnerships, and doing so in a way that would really promote learning. Next slide, please. So just sort of highlighting a few points on hermetic storage and post-harvest loss that are likely known by most people on this call. Post-harvest loss can be greater than 25%. It's a critical issue for smallholder farmers. And with the use of hermetic storage, losses can be significantly reduced. And so there's been some fairly decent work done, amount of work done to try to estimate the benefits of applying hermetic storage technologies. Some of the work has been done by folks on this call, Giordane Baribuzza, and a couple of the studies, just to cite, have noted that for every 100 kilos stored of cowpea, $27 can be additional revenue can be generated through the use of hermetic storage technology. Similarly, for maize, that number was estimated to be $20. And some work done by Sophie Walker and colleagues have estimated that the use of hermetic storage bags can increase the number of meals by a family by over 8. Next slide, please. So additional point to make on hermetic storage is that, and this again is from Baribuzza, we see in the lower left-hand corner $25 million in grants that have gone into hermetic storage technology over the last decade plus. And in the far right, we see the estimate of the total amount of additional cash flow generated by the promotion or the use of hermetic storage technology, which is $3 billion. So the point here is just to highlight that there's tremendous cash flow that's been generated by hermetic storage technology relative to the investments in grants to promote hermetic storage. Next slide, please. So lastly, just a point to indicate the opportunity for additional work in this field. If we look at the lower right-hand bars, we see that the total amount of hermetic storage, total number of bags that were sold in 2023 were estimated to be about 6 million. But if we see the potential sales of hermetic storage bags in 2023, that number is 42 million. And these aren't sort of perfect numbers, but the point here is just to demonstrate or to provide an illustration of the significant gap between the amount of hermetic storage bags that have currently been sold and the opportunity for additional sales, additional uptake of that technology. And it's in this context that this award has been made, and the focus really is at looking at other innovative models through which our partners can promote the uptake and use of hermetic storage technology. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that background, Stephen. So now we want to have a little bit more background as well on each of the three programs we'll be highlighting today to get a sense of the context, the models, and the top line results that were achieved in each. So I'm going to pass it to Kura first. Could you take a few minutes just to tell us a little bit about IRC's approach in Niger? I think you're on mute, actually. There you go.
Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. The project called War and Touch was on promotion of this hermetic storage technology, and it was an innovative project launched in 2021, and we wanted to promote PICS technology in 2 regions of the country. Someone's microphone is This project is called the integration of warrantage in agricultural markets to promote PICS technology and also to enable producers to improve their storing capacity for their food produce and also strengthen the nutritional value of their harvest and also to increase their revenue when they sell their food commodities in the market. And not just at harvesting where the price is a bit low. It was to increase household revenue and to also avoid any harvest losses that would arise through traditional conservation mechanisms. In terms of context, you know that in Niger, you have 26 million people and 80% of this population depends on agriculture and livestock for their own survival, as well as agricultural production due to climate phenomena has had chronic deficits that have been as high as 39%, as was the case in 2023. In terms of food prices, it has been a huge occurrence in the Sahel. Given our climatic phenomenon, we have had flooding, we have had desertification, and so there has been an inequality and inflation in terms of food prices. This is a limiting factor, and his screen is frozen. Over to you, dear host.
I'm seeing that we may have lost Kura. Oh.
It's intermittently coming back, but he is frozen. If you'll take over.
Jermaine, or maybe Kura. Yeah, there you go. We.
As I was saying, there's been a rise in food prices, and this is due to the inequality between supply and demand. And this has witnessed food inflation and a rise in food prices in the market, especially for millet, cowpeas, groundnuts, and sorghum. Another context update that we can give in the implementation of this project is on conflict and insecurity. This is linked to the presence of non-governmental armed groups in the tri-border area and the Lake Chad Basin. These are the different contextual characteristics that the project was implemented in. Next slide. As regards Niger, the business model brought together a certain number of stakeholders through partnership, and they engaged IRC, that is the central coordinating entity that coordinates all activities between agriculture, cooperatives, and other partners that were identified and worked in these partnerships, including IRC that was coordinating and putting cooperatives in touch with the private sector, Coris Bank, a financial institution that offers loans and training on financial management to cooperatives, We have the company called HUSA, and we identified this enterprise. It is an accredited entity that offered the PICS bags to these cooperatives. We also have a platform called for Federation Moriban, which is the administrative unit of all cooperatives in the country that helps in mobilizing and monitoring cooperatives involved in the project. There's also virtual market that shares information with farmers on market prices so that we can identify the best market to sell food commodities. And then there have been certain agricultural innovations to improve in production and sell. Next slide. Thank you. I will share with you the results from our project. We have 155 cooperatives that participated in this initiative, and they worked with the HUSA company, which supplies the PICS bags. Then we have 18,965 PICS bags that were sold to cooperative members. And in terms of performance, we have 100% performance output in the use of PICS bags. There were no complaints that were reported on poor quality of the bags. 6,522 producers were trained and used these PICS bags. 1,406 metric tons of products were stored using these PICS bags with a value of $733,768. Cooperatives members who stored their food produce, they received loans totaling about $520,468 from chorus banks through a system called Warrantage. And this represents 70% of those individuals who received loans through the Warrantage system. We also saw a net increase in revenue for the households that benefited from this Warrantage and credit system. Next slide. So together, this is what we had to present to you for the Niger context. Thank you, and we wait for any questions that may arise. Over to you.
Thank you so much. That was really great background. Now we'd like to hear a little bit about the IDE program. Prajuna, could you take a minute to give us some quick background on IDE's approach in Nepal?
Thank you, Jen. Good morning, good afternoon, namaste. I'm Prajuna Kesi, the country director of IDE Nepal. If I may have the IDE slide, I'd be speaking a little bit about reducing post-harvest losses through access to new technology project. From here on, I'll be referring it to as Replant. Next slide. Just to give you a brief backdrop of the context in which this project is contextualized, agriculture plays a pivotal role in Nepal's economy. We are largely an agrarian economy, which contributes to about 24% of the nation's GDP and engages about 64% of the population. But despite this, food insecurity remains a very pressing issue, affecting more than 4.6 million people across the country, with 10% being severely food insecure. A significant challenge Nepal's agriculture sector is facing is post-harvest loss, particularly in cereal crop. Storage losses ranging from 5 to 20% are primarily due to insects, rodents, the hot and humid conditions of the monsoon season. This loss is exacerbated by inadequate storage facilities, lack of drying techniques, limited access to finance and insurance, and poor transportation infrastructure. Even though we are an agrarian economy, commercial farming is largely absent, with the majority farmers being smallholder farmers who own less than half a hectare of land, who have lack of resources, financial capital, and limited exposure to essential agriculture inputs. As a result, we still see high on-farm storage loss, with many smallholder farmers still relying very heavily on traditional methods. The absence of capital and effective storage solutions often forces farmers to sell crops immediately after harvest, preventing them from capitalizing higher prices later in the season. So within this backdrop, Replant selected 2 regions, as you can see in the map. The green one being Bake, which is the rice super zone, and the blue one being Dang, which is the maize super zone. So the project was implemented in these 2 projects and in these 2 districts of Nepal. Next slide, please. The Replant project was designed to address these challenges by accelerating the adoption of post-harvest hermetic storage technologies. And the innovative approach in this was getting these alliance partners, because this project was almost done in co-creation with ID, which is an NGO that uses market-based approaches, Muktinath Vikas Bank, which has a lead role nationally in lending to smallholder sector, Siddhartha Premier Insurance Company, which provides crop and other insurance, and our other private sector partner, NAFSEEDS. It's a manufacturer, distributor of hermetic storage bags. So when we were designing this project, we really wanted to bundle services rather than just providing access to PICS-bag, the post-harvest, post-hermetic storage technology. We also wanted to bundle other services that would help with the adoption. So as you can see in the model here, at the center of this model are community business facilitators. They are community sales agents that are recruited and trained by IDE. They are basically sales agents that we connect with local aggregates who are input suppliers, because we want to have sustainable local supply chain for our PICS bags. So we connect those aggregates to NAFSEEDS, and the community business facilitators act as sales agents that are providing the local services to our farmers. The community business facilitators are also connected with the financial institutions, both the insurance company and the bank, and they act as intermediaries between the smallholder farmers providing these services. So even in the remotest parts of Nepal, the smallholder farmers can have access to these services through the last mile agents. In addition to providing these services, the CBFs, with the support of IDE, also do demonstration of the PICS bag in terms of its usage, and also other integrated pest management services, so that the farmers can adopt complementary practices that could further their production. Next slide, please. As Steve mentioned, even though with a very small budget and the shorter time of 18 months, we've had very impressive results. Smallholder farmers who adopted hermetic storage technologies saw a significant reduction in post-harvest losses. As you can see, during the duration of the project, 19,148 PICS bags were sold, which resulted in 61.7 tons of food loss reduction. And these farmers, they stored about 963.1 cereal crops. We can with confidence say that we have really strengthened and built a sustainable local supply chain by working together with 42 aggregates. We've trained 57 community business facilitators, and we've reached out to 8,690 clients in our region. And during the project duration, we've 223 crop insurance was issued, and 2,071 saving accounts were opened. In closing this, I just wanted to bring back that one of the lessons learned for us was the bundling effect, the comprehensive package that we offered, not just in terms of PICS bag, but also bundling with crop insurance, with consumption loan, and also with providing them complementary services of providing them training on integrated pest management, really helped in the uptake of adoption. And involving community members who are within the community really helped us build that trust, and so that we can be assured that there'll be more sustainable usage of the PICS bag in the future. With that, I'm going to conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to field any questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Prajuna. So then for our last recap, I'm going to ask Giordane to share an overview of the Purdue approach in Tanzania. Giordane?
Yeah, thank you, Jen. So I'm just going to talk about the cash DZ, which is a project we implemented in Tanzania. As you can see, we had several partners there, including the Tanzania Agricultural Development Bank, the PPTL. We have also had Rudy, Brighton, IITA, and a media company that is listed there. So as you can see, slide 2, please. So when we were promoting the hermetic bags, we realized that we still had opportunity to promote the bags for income generation. So as you can see the graph on the right, in 2001, there were about 1.6 million bags that were sold to farmers. And we realized that the potential was out around 8.4 million bags. And so by just capturing about like 12% of the 7 million tons of maize produced in Tanzania, the potential was 8.4 million bags. So in 2021 with 1.6, so the sales were about 18% of the total potential. So that's why this grant was really a great opportunity for us to explore the use of the PICS bags for income generation. Next slide, please. So our approach was to use what we called collateral management agreements. So the aim was to increase maize stored by addressing farmers' liquidity constraint at harvest. So as you know, farmers sell most of their grain at harvest to pay back the loans for input, such as seed and fertilizer. So the CMA, based on the bank request, it required tripartite agreements. So we had the bank, we had the producer organization, and then the maize buyers. So we work with the producer organization that had existing relation with the bank. So they were receiving input loans from the bank. So we tried to tap into the existing relation. So they borrowed money for input, such as fertilizer and seed. And this money was borrowed in November and December of every year before planting. So we hope that, during the cropping season before harvest, then they will borrow money for the output loans, what we call the CMA. So with the CMA, the goal was to provide loans at harvest and be able to capture 30% of what the farmers were selling at harvest. So the aim was to try to reduce the amount of maize they sell at harvest so we can store that maize. And then farmers will be able to borrow money from the bank, 70% of the value of their maize. And then that maize will be stored for a few months. Then they will sell the maize at higher price and then pay the bank back and then be able to make additional income. So that was the aim of the program. So next slide, please. So at the end of the day, we had challenges receiving the output loans. So the banks were not able to provide the output loans. So one of the challenge was the bank was not willing to add an output loan on an existing input loan. So the loans for input were given in July and were to be paid in November of the following year, by November of the following year, but the output loan was to be given in July, June, July. So before the input loans were paid back, farmers were requesting the output loan. So the bank was not willing to add input loan on top of the output loan. So, and the biggest challenge we had was that maize prices went up. So once they went up, so it was really hard for us to be able to incentivize farmer to store because the prices were just very attractive for farmers. As you can see on the graph on the bottom, so 2021, maize was about 350 shillings. And then in 2023, it was really, really high. So it was really hard for us to be able to incentivize farmers to sell. So from there, we changed our strategy. So we went from the CMA training, we switched to the traditional village demonstration because we realized it was hard to secure the loans. And we also used some media to reinforce the village demonstration. And we also tried to improve the supply chain. So as you can see at the bottom, so the sales significantly increased with the village demonstration plus the CMA training. So this resulted in a 7% increase in adoption in 3 years. And also the sales increased by 6-fold. So thank you very much, and I'll be more available for questions.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Giordane. And I am seeing several questions in the chat. So if our speakers would like to try to address any of them in the chat, that would save us some time, but we can also circle back to those questions during the discussion sections coming up. So with that background, I think let's get the conversation started. We're going to structure this around three key questions that the programs will then take up and answer from their perspectives. So the first question we have is, the collaboration with financial institutions really seems like a vital component of each of these programs. Collaboration between the financial institutions and the projects themselves, financial institutions and farmers, and financial institutions in the public sector. So could you share some of your experiences with the limitations, incentives, and lessons from each of the approaches that you used when it comes to effective collaboration and partnering with financial institutions? For this question, we're going to hear from IRC and then from IDE. Over to you, Kora and Musa. You're on mute. There you go.
Thank you very much. Collaboration with financial institutions in Niger, we led that following an identification of our banking partner. Over here, for such a project with so many cooperatives, 150 cooperatives with 6,000 farmers, only banks have such a capacity to be able to support such a huge number. It enabled us, on one hand, to widen our coverage of producers instead of using microfinance institutions that are locally available or who are at community level and can only take care of small producers. We therefore were guided to work with a banking partner which had the capacity to roll out $1 million so that it could support this One Touch initiative in our country, which enabled the disbursement of close to 520,000 USD, or close to 70% of the value of stored food products. Most farmers were able to store about 1,400 tons for all products, whether it's millet or maize, because these are the main products that are in the market, aside from sesame and groundnuts. We signed agreements with the bank, and IRC was the intermediary between the bank and the cooperative movements through their large federation, and it enabled us to improve planning, to lead the process, and also to carry out monitoring and evaluation of these cooperatives based on the credit that they received. And the bank is, besides the issuance of credit facilities, trained these agricultural producers in terms of financial literacy. This was also a means of improving their management capacities for the funds that they received through the different investments that IRC supported and showed them, especially for drafting business plans for those who wanted to set up income-generating activities. IRC also enabled them to understand how to make revenue after storing their harvest for a period of 3 to 6 months, so that they could have better prices when they sell in the market. This is how the collaboration with the financial institutions helped us. On one hand, it contributed heavily to risk assessment, especially on matters of storage. Through this One Touch initiative, the only guarantee was the harvested food stock that were in shops. Now, IRC, carrying out verification together with the bank, working with their risk analysis department, we verified all these details on stock and produce. They verified and they analyzed all risks on stock. whether especially when they were stored in PICS bags, so that they would ensure that their risk was at the minimal level possible. Then they carried out monitoring of this stock in the boutiques and shops where they were stored. So we had great engagement and collaboration with the banks for these main two activities. One, training cooperatives and allocation of credit, as well as carrying out monitoring of the different things that were at stake, especially on issuance of credit. This is what we were able to do, and I'll ask Musa to give a word.
Donc, avec la banque,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we actually shift Perjuna to make sure we have time for her reflections as well? And then we can carry on during the group discussion as needed. Perjuna, are you able to share? Oh, is it?
Yeah, Jennifer. Yeah, I will take that question.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Trishadi.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. My name is Trishakti Rana, and I'm working as a market system development lead here at ID Nepal. So in regards to the replant project, reducing post-harvest losses through adoption of new technologies, we partnered with two types of financial institutions. One with the bank to provide access to inclusive finance, and the other one was partnering with the insurance company to provide access to crop insurance. In regards to partnering with the bank, we partnered with Muktinath Vikas Bank Limited. And just to give you a little bit of background and context of Nepal, access to finance for smallholder farmers are very limited here in Nepal. They are dependent on community-based organizations such as cooperatives to access loans. So basically, we are working with communities who do not have who do not traditionally have access to formal financial institutions. In addition to that, financial institutions are not catering to smallholder farmers due to high operational cost, coupled with small loan sizes. And some of the lessons we learned while working with these financial institutions are: number one, it is important to develop long-standing relationship with financial institutions. So what I want to say here is it is important to work with financial institutions with whom you've worked with before, who understand your working modality. And also, it is very important for the financial institution to be familiar with development sector modalities. So what this allows is it allows them to be flexible in their approach. So whereby, for instance, there are some shortcomings, they can adapt to these situations. Just to give you an example, here in Nepal, when we did this replant project, we had planned to provide consumption loans to the farmers. But due to the financial crunch in the country, the liquidity crisis, we were not able to do so. Banks could not provide loans, and we quickly shifted to the saving habits by providing access to special savings credit account, which has special facilities for the farmers. Secondly, it is not feasible for financial institutions just to provide loans to farmers to procure only PICS bag, considering the small size of the loans. Therefore, it is very important to bundle various input services required by the farmers together, so that the loan size is bigger and financial institution can step in and provide loans, access to finance. Thirdly, which is very important to us, ID's resilient market ecosystem approach to provide wholesale financing to the smallholder farmers through cooperative is a very scalable option. Farmers need loan products that include a consumption component, because we're talking about farmers, we're asking farmers to store their harvest for a couple of months. So they need loans to use it for the consumption purpose, enabling them to meet immediate needs while waiting for better market prices. Because we are asking them to store, because in a few months time, the prices are going to rise, so they can sell it when the prices are high. So they need the loan for their consumption purpose. This is very, very important. So this is crucial opportunity for expanding, providing access to consumption loan is a very important component for adoption of post-harvest technology, for adoption of hermetic storage technologies. And lastly, the project's short duration limited the realization of economic benefits from the financial bundles, which are influenced by macroeconomic conditions. So longer-term projects are necessary to fully leverage the potential of these financial institutions and these financial bundles and packages that I just mentioned. And in regards to working with insurance company, we partnered with Siddhartha Insurance Company. But the farmers showed little interest in crop insurance due to the belief that crop losses are minimal compared to livestock losses. This, coupled with the lack of awareness about the benefits and the general hesitancy towards non-life insurance, contributed to their reluctance. In addition to this, lengthy and complex procedure to settle insurance was another bottleneck for the uptake and adoption of insurance packages that I just highlighted. And some of the key lessons learned in regards to partnering with and working with insurance companies are, number one, we need to minimize operational costs for insurance companies by aggregating insurance policies. So we need some sort of insurance aggregation at the local level. This will reduce the operational cost on behalf of the insurance company. Second one is we need to launch comprehensive awareness campaigns targeting both farmers and local stakeholders to educate them about the advantages of crop insurance. So, providing awareness campaigns is very important for uptake of insurance as well. And thirdly, develop simplified and accessible insurance products specifically tailored to the needs of the farmers. So we need to understand the needs of the farmers first. Some form of need assessment in regards to the adoption of insurance policies is very important here. This ensures that these products are easy to understand, affordable, address the specific risks faced by the agricultural commodities. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thanks, Trishakti. So I want to also just remind us that we've got interpretation. So if we can speak slowly so the interpreter can keep up with us, that would be great. I think what we'd like to shift to now, we have a few minutes to take some questions. And I think we have so many good ones in the chat. So some of them have been answered, but maybe I can just pick a couple. There's a question from Abdishek about his interest in what the maximum loan limit was for farmers. And there have been a couple of questions about interest rates. And then a follow-up question about, was the insurance liable to pay EMIs if there was agricultural loss? This is to Trishakti. So maximum loan limit, interest rate, and kind of the insurance liabilities, if you want to speak to that.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I'll take that question. So in regards to the loan size and the interest rate, like I mentioned, we had plans with Muktinath Bank to provide loans to the farmers. But like I said, we could not move forward with that because of the liquidity crunch. So in fact, the bank itself moved on to the saving mechanism whereby we could open a special savings account for the farmers. But having said that, the cooperatives were on top, they were the ones who were providing the loans to the farmers, because the cooperatives are the one representing the farmers at the local level. But at the cooperative level, the loan, the interest rate is slightly higher than that of the financial, of that of a regular financial institution. But the loan again varies. That depends anywhere between 12 to 18%. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And I saw that Musa, you had responded in the chat about the loan allocations to the cooperatives according to the warehouse and food items. Did you want to speak a little bit more to that before we move on? You're on mute.
As I was saying, to have access to loans, you need to be a member of a cooperative. We also negotiated with the banking partner to have an affordable rate that small producers will be able to repay. In terms of credit, the rates are usually 12 to 14%, but with Chorus Bank, we negotiated to have a 9% interest rate for cooperatives that were accessing loans. After they carried out due diligence, verification, and also verification of stock, they give 70% of the value of the stock that is found in a shop. The only guarantee for the bank was just the stock, the verified stock. This is what I had wanted to add within our system here in Niger. But in Niger, for certain products that are likely to be attacked by insects or moisture, such as cowpeas, peanuts, and other things, we should really encourage the use of PICS bags. That's what I wanted to add on concerning our country, Niger, and this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one or two more questions. There was a couple of questions from Hedwig about whether Chorus financed the PICS bags or the stock stored in the warehouse, and was the use of PICS bags a prerequisite credit for the Warrantage program, or was the credit used to purchase the PICS bags? I think that's for IRC.
So PICS bags, we put cooperatives in touch with the company we identified called HUSA. HUSA was the one that was producing the PICS bags, and it had focal points at community level for sale. So there's a company that provides the PICS bags, and so the cooperatives will go to the village or community officers who train the producers on how to use these PICS bags for their produce. Each PICS bags was about 1,000 CFA francs, and the sales agents were getting a commission of 125 CFA francs. So this was a kind of business model that was created in order to improve the use and adoption of this technology at community level. People would come back to sell these bags if they wanted to be sales agents, and they also understood that it was really helpful in terms of storage of their produce. Every time shops were open, we were opening a few PICS bags for demonstration to show them the quality of bags they have for storage. And in addition to the question, it is not Coris Bank that was funding the PICS bags. The funding from Coris Bank was enabling farmers and producers to carry out their income generating activities to increase their income at household levels, so that they can earn much more from what they would make from the PICS bags. The loans were also to help them buy agricultural inputs to prepare for the upcoming planting season, so that they would better prepare for the planting season by buying farm inputs and materials that would enable them to improve production. Because here we are promoting production and storage. So the loan was not essentially or solely meant for purchasing PICS bags. Cooperatives were put in relation with the company HUSA, where they would plan their needs in terms of PICS bags, and each of them would make the company would make an order based on the needs of the cooperatives in terms of the bags in order to store their food produce. This is how our mechanism, the tripartite mechanism, that is the cooperative, the HUSA enterprise, and the bank that gave credit for income generating activities, especially for lean seasons where there's not much production going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Musa. That was great. And I see that many of the questions are being answered directly in the chat, so do keep an eye on the chat, but we can hit some of these other questions in our next section. So our next question for our partners is digging into the nature and importance of public-private partnerships. Can you each share a bit of your reflections on how this particular aspect worked in each of your operational contexts? We're going to hear first from IDE and then to Purdue to answer this question. Parjuna, is it you? Or is it Trishakti?
I'll go again, Jennifer.
Okay, great.
Thank you. The Replan project, designed and implemented by IDE, strongly exemplifies the effectiveness of public-private partnership in driving impactful development outcomes. The collaborative model brought together diverse stakeholders from both the private sector and the local government, each contributing uniquely to the project's success. So in regards to the operational context, like I mentioned before, and like Prajna mentioned before, the private sector partners in this PPP model were the financial institutions, Muktinath Bank that provided access to inclusive finance, Siddhartha Premium Life Insurance that provided access to crop insurance. Then we had the Pix Bag manufacturer, NAF Seeds. And then we had and for the distribution mechanism, we had super dealers who would procure in bulk from the Pix Bags manufacturers. And then we had agrovets who work for the basically who were a part of the distribution mechanism and who procure from the super dealers. And on top of that, we had the last mile supply chain actors in the form of community business facilitators, who are the last mile supply agents, and they are basically linked to the super dealers and the agrovets, and they are the ones who are basically going to the remote areas and providing awareness about the Pix Bag, taking order for the Pix Bag and supplying the Pix Bag to the farmers. And they are provided with commission in regards to the number of sales they do, and they're provided commission by the super dealers and the agrovets. And in regards to the public sector stakeholders, we had representation from the local municipalities, from 11 local municipalities, and they were integral part of the PPP model. And in regards to the implementation partners, we had two implementation partners in two districts that we worked in, and they were more focused on social mobilization and private sector coordination and collaboration with the government stakeholders. And the collaboration extended beyond just participation. They actively promoted the uptake of Pix Bag by offering incentives. This partnership that I just mentioned resulted in significant co-investment from the government, amounting to more than 12,000 USD, which supported the purchase of around 4,000 Pix Bag, moisture meters, and crop insurance subsidies, which were provided by the government. Here in Nepal, the insurance premium, 80% is borne by the central government, and in many cases, the 20% is again borne by the local government. But still, we have hesitancy from the farmers for the uptake of insurance. So that is another limitation. This government support not only facilitated the initial adoption of the technology, but also created a conducive environment for its sustained use. And some of the significant lessons here, working in this PPP model, are that since the project inception, we involved the private sector in discussions with the local government. That this was a very important factor, and by the end of the project, government representatives recognized the private sector's vital role in fostering economic growth, a significant shift from the previous view of it as merely profit-oriented. So the government here in Nepal views private sector as an actor who are more focused only on profit. So that was one of the status quo that was broken by this particular partnership. So that is very, very, very important. And continuous collaboration between the actors can lead to increased resources for the community in form of leverages. Development agencies play a crucial role here. So we as a facilitator can play a crucial role in fostering conversations, in bridging the gap between the private and public sector. So that is a very important facilitator role we as development organization play in bridging this gap. And some of the sustainable outcomes from this partnership have been Crisis Solution, one of our super dealers, intends to maintain existing relationship with the CBFs and to use CBF as the distribution mechanism. So that is something that has been uptaken by one of our super dealers. And agrovets are committed to enhance sales and outreach by training CBFs in skills. So the agrovets are investing in this model by providing sales skills to the CBF so that they can increase their sales and reach to the remotest of the regions. And CBFs themselves plan to contribute by providing agricultural services and hermetic storage promotion, offering ongoing consultation and support to the farmers. So the CBFs themselves are motivated to reach the farmers and increase the adoption of this hermetic storage technologies. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Trishakti. And I see a question for you from Andrew Kaiser in the chat about the CBF model. So if you could maybe answer that in the chat, that would be great. And then I'm going to pass to Dieudonné.
Yeah, so in terms of our cash TZ program in Tanzania, we had a PPP at 3 different levels. One level was capacity building, awareness, creation, and training. And so the second one was on access to finance, and the third one was access to HST or hermetic storage. So for the capacity building, our NGO partners had to work with the district council to involve the government extension in terms of providing training to farmers. And this was for the CMA program, the collateral management agreements, as well as the village demonstration. So they really provided a lot of help in terms of getting farmers involved and engaged in the CMA, also in village demonstration. So one of the learnings there is that the local extension staff are a good agent of change due to their established relation, with local communities. So they have the trust of the local community. So the second one, access to finance. So we work with the National Microfinance Bank, which is NMB, and our main partner was the Tanzania Agricultural Development Bank. So as a government bank, they gave money to NMB. So this allowed the NMB to provide a very low interest rate, which was 9% compared to the market rate of 12%. So this was really a great opportunity. And second, the bank also worked with the local government registrar of cooperative union to be able to vet the farmers group or the producer organization to select those that were eligible for the loans, because sometimes we have challenges with the quality of the farmers group that are involved in this program. So the registrar's office provided all the necessary documents, like legal document, registration, membership, and all this kind of information. So one of the learning we received there, or we took from that, is that despite the vetting process, access to loans by producer organization was challenging due to the bank evolving requirements. So for instance, the bank requested, collateral for the output loan. Despite that, they don't request any collateral for input loans. So they realized that there were so many challenges, they were not sure if they were going to get their money back. So they added all these layers of requirements. And second, the bank also requested that for a group, because some farmers were able to aggregate maize, but they only got like 200 metric tons, and the bank was like, no, this is not profitable. We need at least like 500 metric tons. So on the last one, which is access to HST, so the supplier had minimal collaboration with government institution, but instead they worked with NGO and the POs or producer organization in assessing their demand for hermetic bags. So, and what we realized there, despite that, these groups were backed by NGOs, they were expecting to get the bags on credit. And based on past experiences, the manufacturer was not willing to give the bags on credit. So those are some of just the few lessons we learned from the public-private partnership. But I think the most important was just the fact that extension agents were able to help us, go into this community, and the banks, because the money was coming from an agricultural bank, they were able to lower their interest rate.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. I think we've got so many great questions. I want to make sure that we address some of them. So there are a lot of questions besides just the public-private partnership, the nature of those partnerships, but just some general questions from our audience about, the bags themselves and that supply chain. There's a question from Meredith asking what has worked to get the cost of the PICS bags down. And she's talking about in Malawi, they've provided thousands of bags to farmers over the years, but they don't sustain in the market without being subsidized because of the cost. That's just a good question, I think, in general. There's also a question sort of related to that in terms of how many times these bags can be used. So to me, that's relevant to the price of the bags and also their reusability. Is there any reflection from any of the partners on that piece that you'd like to address?
I would
Judana, if you
go
like.
first
Yeah,
before
go ahead.
I give my answer, please. Prajuna, go first if you want, or Rishakti.
Prajuna has added, go ahead, Prajuna, please.
Is it in terms of the usage or is it in terms of the prices? Which one do you want me to
I
tackle?
think the cost and I think the cost is fine, whichever you found. I see that you've just added a nice response on the CBS piece. But yeah, the cost might be good. Just overall sustainability, cost or reuse.
Sure. So initially, when we introduced PixBag, costs seem to have been an issue. But during the first season, when the PixBag were introduced, we got a lot of queries or requests to reduce the costing. But nowhere at the point in our project we subsidize the cost of the PixBag because we want the model to be sustainable. And we know that once the project exists, that still needs to be sustainable. But I think once the farmers saw the demonstration and after one crop cycle, they actually saw the benefit of the PixBag. Uptake went up despite the cost, the pricing. So I think in Nepal's case, we really didn't have issue with the cost. Even like once the farmers had seen that they got a lot of usage out of it, and it was different from because they were comparing it to other plastic bags that they found in the market. They were like, "Oh, we are getting it on 1/10 of the price that you would find a similar bag." But when we did the demonstration, the 3 layers, and they saw after first season that it really was effective, the pricing wasn't much of an issue. I hope that answers the question. And in terms of usage, we believe that at least for 3 years, we think the farmers can use the PixBag.
For 3 years. Okay, that's a good amount of time.
Yeah,
Giordani, please.
Yeah, I would say, it's just what Prajuna wanted to say. What she said, that's what I wanted to say as well, is when there is enough awareness, costs seem not to be an issue. And we have observed this for the last 15 years, in all the regions of the world. Once awareness is there and you are able to prove to farmers that, the cost of chemical compared to the cost of PixBags, it's just even the same or better. And plus, what I hear from farmers is there is no cost to life because most of these farmers are misusing and overusing chemicals. So then when you're using PixBags, there is no chemical use. So that kinds of preserve the health of the farmers. And cost becomes also a challenge, not just because of lack of awareness, it's also a dysfunctioning supply chain. When the supply chain is not working properly, then we find like the cost of the bags will be high. So, and of course, the questions from Malawi, if a farmer can get free bags, of course, they're going to take them, So I think once that goes away and they're aware of the value of the bag, I'm sure they will go back to the market and buy the bags because they understand the value of the bag.
Okay.
And if I may just add one point, can I? In terms of costing, because we are also ensuring that, as Trishakti mentioned, that we're encouraging farmers to store their crops for longer so that they can sell it during off season and get higher prices for that. And I think once farmers realize that that's an opportunity, a missed opportunity, I think the pricing, the costing part isn't as big of a deal as it's initially
assumed. Yeah. Are there other sort of binding constraints for more uptake? That's a question again from Hedwig. I know we've talked about some of those other kinds of constraints, but is there anything else you want to add when it comes to, besides price, constraints for greater uptake? Is it capacity? Is it awareness, distribution? Any other thoughts you'd like to?
Prajula, if you can go first. Of course, if you have any answer, I have, so I wanted to give you an opportunity at least to answer if you can.
Sure. I think one of the main things we've mentioned over and over again is the lack of awareness. I think there are replications and duplications in the market. And we've actually seen it during the project period where people have bought it at half the price, and it looks very similar with like the logo and everything is same. But when you look at it, it's supposed to have 3 layers, and the one they bought was 1 layer. So there's that. So I think that is sort of a restriction in terms of adoption, getting those duplications in the market. So really for us, it's strengthening those local supply chains and ensuring that we are getting the right product to our smallholder farmers. I think that's one thing. And the other thing, because it's not the first time that PICS bag has been introduced to smallholder farmers in Nepal, but the uptake hasn't been really great because of lack of demonstration. And we've seen it in earlier cases where they've used it, to cover their roof or to cover their motorbikes in the house, because they're like, oh, it's not useful. But when we teach them how it should be done, the proper uses of the PICS bag, and I think that's one of the constraints, not really getting enough demonstration, and the how to use of the PICS bag is maybe a constraining factor.
Yeah, thank you, Prajula. So I would also add that the biggest challenge we have had everywhere for the last 15 years is supply chain. So being able to have a very effective distribution that get the bags from farmers, from manufacturer all the way to farmers. Wherever there is training, like you mentioned, if we did demonstration and so on, the first issue farmers ask, where can I buy the bag? And most of the time the bag is 20 miles, 50 miles from their village, which is really a big constraint. So if you train them and they cannot find the bags, that's a problem. So I think that's where also our development partners and collaborators need to think about. It's not just about showing the farmers how to use the bag, but it's also where can they buy the bag if they want an extra. I know in Malawi they've given bags, but at the same time, a farmer doesn't just produce 100 kg, they produce 500 kg, 1,000 kg. So if you give them one, they should be able to buy another one. Where do they go and buy the other one? So that's the challenge we have had in the past. So being able to develop effective distribution, effective business model to get the bags to farmers is really, really important.
Can you also speak quickly, each of you, to, I know Musa already answered this in the chat, but Carl Wall was asking, who are the people accessing these technologies? The PICS bags, sure, but maybe also the loans. Do either of you have data or insights you can share about who is accessing these technologies? Is it women, men, young people? Does it depend on economic status? Any quick thoughts on that before we move to the next question?
Rajana, do you want to go ahead first, or?
In Nepal's case, because we are focusing mostly on smallholder farmers, as I mentioned, majority of our farmers are smallholder who are from marginalized, and we specifically focused on marginalized communities. So our demographic in terms of uptake is marginalized communities, the households that I mentioned, 8,000 plus households. It's a good mixture. And in Nepal, most of them are women-led households. So fortunately for us, majority of them are women-led households. So that's sort of the demographic we're looking at. So we were very selective in where we were introducing that. So that might not be a good cross-section of who's adopting it at large, but more so a reflection of who we were targeting in our project.
Good point. Go ahead.
So in the case of Tanzania, our approach was to work with producer organization, because these groups were accessing loans from the bank. So it's really hard for an individual to go and ask for a loan, but if farmers are in a group, it's much, much easier. So in terms of adoption of HST, and we also observed that adoption was higher among the PO members because most of the time they are targeted by development agencies and so on. So when we went back into the villages and do the survey, we find that adoption overall among farmers is lower than those who are in POs. And we think that those in PO receive more information, are more connected, to development agencies and so on.
Oh, that makes sense. Well, thank you for that. I think let's move, in the interest of time, to our third and final question. We're digging in on knowing that each of these operational contexts for each of the three programs are quite different, and each program kind of managed different kinds of external factors that influenced outcomes. We'd like to understand what factors might limit the impact or scalability of these kinds of partnerships, and how might practitioners who are tuning in today adapt their approaches based on your reflections around those limitations and externalities. We're going to hear first from Purdue and then to IRC for this third question.
Yeah, in terms of, thank you, Jen. In terms of external factors, so one of the biggest challenges we had was price uncertainty of the maize. So in some of these market price, you cannot really predict how maize price is going to look like in the next 5 to 6 months. So in case of Tanzania, in the past year, sometimes you will have, where the government will just close the border and say, no maize moves out of the country, but those policies have been, they're no longer in place. So it was really, really challenging. And plus you have, demand from neighboring countries. So if the demand is high, then price will go up. If there is no demand, the price will be depressed. So those were really, really challenges we had there. So, and one of the learnings there is it's better to think about a crop where price can be predicted, at least in the next 5 to 6 months. For instance, cowpea in West Africa, most likely, you can have some ideas how the price is going to look in the next 6 months. So, and then the second one, it's on maize particularly. If people use PICS bags, that means the maize does not have insecticide, and also the level of aflatoxin is low because the bags are able to prevent mold growth and so on. But when you take your maize in the market, there is no incentive, there is no premium prices for that maize. So that becomes really, less incentive for farmer to use PICS bags. In fact, what we have observed based on the study IETA conducted under this program is we have farmers who are storing maize for home consumption in PICS bags. And then when it comes to maize for sale, they're still using chemical because, it's maize that is going to be stored only for, 2 to 3 months or 4 months, and then they sell it right away. So we think if there are no incentives for farmers to be paid for using PICS bags, it's just going to be hard for them to adopt the bags for income generation. So the third one is really aligning the interventions. Here I'm talking about the loans. So the input loans were given in November, December to be paid by November of the next year. And the output loan were to be given in July when the input loans were not paid yet. So, and we try to bundle both, so that farmers, when they apply for input loan, they get output loans as well. It didn't really work well. So, and then we pushed again to try to ask farmers, aggregate your maize, and then you'll go and secure the loan from the bank. They did aggregate, and then the bank said, okay, you need at least 500 metric tons. So there were all these challenges, but we think there is need to test the bundling again, where we bundle the input and output loan together, and then try to test the model if we had more time to do it. The last but not least, it's expanding the reach of the interventions. So we were targeting POs or producer organization at the beginning, but when we realized that there were challenges in terms of accessing the loan, then we decided to shift, to just target all the farmers. As I just noted earlier, adoption rate among producer organization was high, but among all the farmers was really low. So we thought about, let's just get this awareness building training to all the farmers. That will allow us at least to increase the adoption among the general population of farmers. So that's how we were able to move from about 40% to about 47% adoption rate. So those are just some of the points, we can talk about the externalities, but the biggest one I think was, low production, which increased the price of maize, and plus, there are no incentive for farmers to be paid for quality maize.
Thank you for that. Musa Nkura, would you like to take this?
Indeed, thank you. And obviously, in terms of limiting factors in this project, we noted that the changing political context, which led to the closure of borders, led to a reduction in terms of movement and also on transport of produce. So the changing political climate affected implementation of the project. Secondly, there was a weakness that is still linked to risk analysis. We thought about it, and we had thought of maybe having a guarantee fund, since we observed that the consequence of the political crisis that affected us, the lack of liquidity and the closure of borders, most producers witnessed delays in payment or even repayment of credit. So we had a guarantee fund as a remedial measure, so as to be able to enable these producers to honor their commitments and respect the timelines that they had agreed with the bank. These are two key points for some of the things that we identified in our context regarding some of the limits that arose in implementation of the project. But besides this, we also observed that producers, during the first disbursement, the producers were able to store about 700 tons of food produce. If you compare this this output between the first, second, or third year, when you look at storage capacity, producers had a bit of challenge, and this was linked to the availability of these fixed bags and also availability of funds or credit. And with these credit limits, most of them did not engage in other alternative income generating activities or even have other elements of liquidity for them to be able to work out and improve their output. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I know we have some time now set aside to answer all remaining questions, and I've been trying to track which questions have not yet been answered from the chat and the Q&A. So one that's, I think, an interesting one related to the sort of limiting factors question that you guys have just finished responding to. Is this comment from Dallas Steiner? If Tanzania, for instance, has the potential of 8.4 million bags that are needed, the demand, is there a big enough supply of bags in East Africa to support this amount to meet that demand? And I think that that's a good question overall for each country and each region represented on this webinar today. If people want to speak to any of the issues around demand versus supply of the bags. I know it's a little chicken egg because sometimes you have to build demand and the supply is not there, or there was a comment from Hedwig as well about, you know, wholesalers or other retailers hesitant to stock the bags for fear that they won't sell. So maybe speak to that question from Dallas. Whoever would like to take it first. Giordani, you're on mute.
So I would say the capacity, it depends on what country you're talking about. So I would say, for example, in Tanzania, there is enough capacity because the manufacturer in Tanzania is a regional manufacturer. So he supplies bags to Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, Uganda, and sometimes Rwanda, DRC. So he is even expanding his capacity to be able to meet the supply. So the capacity is there. But the challenge, again, as I noted earlier, is more on the distribution side, you know, being able to get the bags to where the farmers are located. But in other markets, for example, you find, because the supply is not responding to the demand, that's when you find these, like what Prajuna said, you find these bags that look almost similar to like PIX bags or Grain Pro bags or whatever else is there. And then, you know, these fakes and imitation bags are trying to go into the market. So, and what I noted there, the 8.4 million bags, just only for maize. So if you add all the other crops, you might reach maybe like 10, 15 million bags per year. So yeah, I think the capacity is there.
The capacity is there, and also there's a difference in quality, and that the poor quality bags could sort of dampen demand long term.
What we have realized, for example, in many countries is farmers sometimes tend to switch to the cheapest one, but after 1 year, you find the performance of those bags are not good. So most often you find insects will make holes in those bags, and they end up going back to buying the bags they know
That
or
are
they
better.
trust in the market. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood your point. Sorry.
Mhm.
Prajuna or Musa or Kura, would you like to speak to this question of sort of the tension between supply and demand, or the main question of, is there enough supply to meet the projected demand in your areas?
In terms of capacity, we do not have such a problem because USA has a certain capacity to be able to provide these bags. We set up a mechanism to enable scale up and wider usage of these bags. Right now, our producers can be able to distinguish between PICS bags and counterfeits. And counterfeits cost 1,500 francs, while PICS bags cost 1,000 francs. And if they want to store 5 kilograms of cowpeas, for example, if we try to estimate their monetary value, it's about 6,000 francs. They did the price comparison between counterfeits and PICS bags, which has made in our intervention areas, PICS bags have had higher usage. Within communities, there are points of sale that has been created, and the company, after its own, the agents receive their commission after the sale of these bags, and the producers and focal points usually also receive a commission for each bag that is sold. All these focal persons serve as an interface. If someone wants to buy a bag, you're going to be shown how to use it. And in terms of the reuse, we have received feedback because it's been close to 3 years. There are producers who've used these bags for 2-3 planting campaigns, and they have really appreciated the performance of these bags. Also, we have used community radio stations to carry out awareness and sensitization activities, as well as information sharing so that they can know how to use PICS bags. There is also a platform that we set up in order to ensure widespread scale up and adoption of this technology. Also, the issue of cost is not there because individuals are obliged to use quality bags in order to stock their produce, especially cowpeas. And right now, PICS bags are even much cheaper to find than the other bags in the market. And to add on to what Musa has said, in Niger, the Husa enterprise is the accredited national firm that offers PICS bags to the citizens. And to ensure sustainability, we ensured that this distributor enters into direct contact with cooperatives so that they can do direct planning as they wait for the end of the planting season and agriculture campaign, so that they can know how much bags farmers will need. And this is what helps them to gather with farmers to make orders and to deliver the said bags to farmers. We created this path, this network, this dynamic that has enabled farmers and the company to work together and have continuous partnership to have these PICS bags and to have a return on their investment, both at the company level and the cooperatives. This is how it works out in Niger. Thank you.
Well, merci. We have a couple more minutes for some questions. I have one that I've saved from the chat, but Dieudonné, you have one that you want to respond to, is that right? Oh, you're on mute.
Apologies, yeah.
That's okay.
I had a question from Louise Sperling from the SID Systems. And she asked a question whether there were different sizes of PICS bags in the marketplace and whether women and men would be able to lift those bags and so on. So for now, there are only two sizes in the market, 50 kg PICS bags and then 100 kg PICS bags. So, and as I noted in the response there, the bags are mostly treated as storage containers. So they're just used in the house. Of course, they might be filled outside the house and then moved inside the house. So I don't have any data to show how are they moved in the house. Do the women do it themselves or do they get help from any relatives or member of the community? On that side, I'm not really sure. So, but what we know is most development agencies tend to buy 50 kg bags for, distributing to farmers and so on. But when it gets to buying, farmers themselves, when you get to buying bags, they buy 100 kg. So one of the reasons is because the cost of storage for 100 kg is really lower compared to the 50 kg. So in some markets, you might find, for example, in Tanzania, I don't know the exact price, but if the 100 kg was like 4,500 shillings, the 50 kg will be like 3,500. So you find just for a difference of 1,000 shillings, you're doubling your storage capacity. So, so that's why, though the bags are bigger, they tend to be used as storage container in the house. And then when they go to sell the grain in the market, they empty the grain into a different container and then fold the bags and keep it until they harvest. They get the harvest for the next season. So that's all I wanted to say there. Thanks.
Thanks so much for that. Also, there's a follow-up question maybe relevant to that from Hedwig. How many bags of which size per household, according to your experience? But it sounds like mostly people are buying the 100 kg bags. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So on average, it's 3 to 5 bags per household. And I'm talking here just the general, general farmers. It's not like the PO members and so on, just the regular folks. It's 3 to 5 bags. On average, I would say it's 5 bags. That's what we see people using in their household. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. I think we can have, actually, I'm so sorry, but I think we might be completely out of time. This was an incredibly rich discussion, so many great questions and such great insights from the 3 programs. I want to really thank the Purdue, IRC, and IDE team members for your insightful conversation, and to all of you in the audience for the rich discussion today. We are going to drop a couple of survey links into the chat. If you could take a couple of minutes to give us your feedback on how you thought today went. And I also want to pass it back to Stephen Walsh if he has any final words to share with us. And I can see you have added something to the Q&A, Stephen, if you want to just say that.
Yeah, just thank you very much. Just a reminder that this was a wonderful learning opportunity, but there's a lot more work to be done. I put a reference in the chat to the Stather paper from 2020. It's a meta review of, I think it's 334 post-harvest loss interventions in 57 countries and for 22 crops. One of the major findings of that is that there's a real opportunity for additional post-harvest research, looking beyond the technology alone, looking at issues related to training and better understanding the impact of post-harvest loss investments. So this was great work, but we think there's a lot more opportunity to do in this space. And so just a reminder that la lutte continue. So thanks everybody for your participation today.
Thank you so much for those closing remarks, Stephen. Thanks again to Kura, to Musa, to Prajuna, to Dieudonné, and to Trishkati for your great reflections and sharing today. I know it was extremely valuable for the audience. And thanks to the audience for the great discussion and the really good questions. You'll see that you'll be able to find the recording from this webinar on the FSN website later. And yeah, thanks again for taking the time to share with us today. Really appreciate it.